Hello. So it's very nice out. It's really nice out, and I just want to make a video on things I don't agree with my immigrant parents, because even though I'm the only one that voices these things as a first generation, like, what's it called, first generation something, but basically I'm like the first generation to be born in another country while the rest of my family is born somewhere else. So I'm the first generation to be born in Canada instead of like my parents' home country. And something I know, there's a lot of thing I noticed that's just dysfunctional, and it's so dysfunctional that but no one questions it, especially not my cousins, for example. Like, they live with these things and like they think it's normal, but just because you're used to something doesn't make it right, you know. It's like, just because you're used to like abuse doesn't make it right, you know. It doesn't make it good, it doesn't make it any less better, you know. If it hurts you and if it is a problem in your life and it affects you, like whether that's your parents or your situation in life or anything, then it is worth considering, it is worth acknowledging, and it's time to take action on it, you know. Action on that's something you can control. You may not always be able to control others' behaviors, but you can control yourself. So I think awareness is always the first most important step when it comes to like identifying and changing things. So when I make this video about like why things I don't agree with my immigrant parents, I don't make it to shame anyone's parents and force their parents to change. You know, this is more about how it is negatively affecting the person, so such as the child, such as people like me. And I want people to feel seen and heard, because this is a very, I feel like, common issue, but it's just not voiced enough, and I feel like a lot of people can feel trapped with that. And even if you don't have immigrant parents, this is still a really good video, I think, just to kind of be aware and empathize children of immigrant parents, because I think we can all learn a lot from them. So first thing that's on my mind here. Okay, so first of all, immigrant parents, like, kind of the essence of them, you know, is that even if they didn't have to plan kids like my dad, their whole life is just making their kids responsible for their worth, you know. So what I mean by that is, like, basically, if the child, like, basically they're expecting the child their whole life. Like, their whole life, this child just has expectations, right? And more often than not, unfortunately, these parents don't have emotional intelligence, so they don't know how harmful these expectations are. And I think when you're a parent, well, if I were to empathize with being a parent, I'm obviously not, but if I were to empathize with being a parent, like, having expectations is good. It's not necessarily a harmful thing, but because it's really, first of all, excessive, okay, it's like their whole life, and second of all, it's from a place of like fear, more often than not. So when immigrant parents like push their kids to be, I don't know, like, let's use stereotypical example. When their immigrant parents like push their kids to be like doctors, for example, okay, they're saying it from a place of fear, and also they're saying it constantly because they depend on other people for their approval, for their life, because more often than not, immigrant parents like sacrifice a lot, and because of like their background and upbringing, like, it's going to be a little harder to transition here when your whole life you've been somewhere else and it's a totally different culture. And yeah, and it's just so harmful though, because of their hardships and upbringing, they hope it is worth it, and so they use their kids as a way to fill that void, because more often than not, immigrant parents also, they have lived unfulfilling lives, and their life was incomplete, and then they had kids, you know, and because they had kids, they didn't really have time to explore themselves, and they didn't really believe in, first of all, they didn't really believe in their ability to explore life and understand themselves, and they think they're irrelevant. So instead, they kind of put that hope, put that wanting to explore life more, put that sense of accomplishment all onto their kids, you know. And first of all, your kids didn't even have to be born, okay? Second of all, this is a huge like expectation, and this is really heavy, and this is burdensome, you know, because you're not living your, like, if your parents are constantly injecting fear into you. For example, my dad, he'll tell me, don't have kids like me, and no, let me give you another example. Like, yeah, don't have more than like 3 kids, for example. And he's constantly saying that every morning, like, just injecting to into the brain. Maybe it is from a good place in his heart that he wants his kids to not suffer like him, right? But it is incredibly demanding to, like, constantly expect your kids your whole life. Because whenever, for example, my mom talks to me about something, that she, like, let's say she's disappointed in my behavior, instead of going, oh, what's wrong, or like being emotionally intelligent about it, right? Being like, so what's the root cause, maybe? What could have, like, you've done? What could have you improved? Why it's important to do this, Instead, she always comes up to me if she's disappointed in my behavior and goes, I expect. And it's really awful, because the kid doesn't develop themselves with these expectations, right? How is the kid supposed to know what they want in life, what they want to get out of life, and who they are, if they're not having the time to, and the space to, like, understand themselves and do things that they want to do, and maybe it doesn't approve of them. So I just think that's so harmful that they expect, and, like, that's the entire, like, immigrant child thing. Like, they just expect, and if you don't, some of them learn how to unconditionally love, but more often than not, they don't. And it's really sad, because it is from a place of love. Obviously, they love their kids and they want good for their kids and their future. But also, it's just from a place of, like, this void they're trying to fill in themselves. It is honestly so sad, and I really wish, like, more parents would know this, and they have the self-awareness for this. But it's just so harmful, because, and that void they're trying to fill is, like, the void of the life they didn't have and they want you to have, and the void of not feeling like a someone, feeling like my kid, like, they see their kid as, like, an extension of them, which is a little bit toxic in some cases, but, like, they kind of, in some ways, they are, like, their blood. My dad always says, like, you guys are my blood, so no matter what you do to me, like, I'm always gonna care for you, And yeah, it's really sad, because this can be changed starting with self-awareness, right? Starting with being aware of these things and being aware of why they do it. They can definitely love from a more compassionate place. They can definitely develop more emotional intelligence. But as for children of immigrant parents, I hope they know this. I feel like, especially for Asians, I don't know so much about, like, Europeans, because there's definitely European, like, people I know, like, their parents are from Europe, and they came here and immigrated here, but, like, I feel like that's totally different. I feel like it's more so, like, Asian community, so all Asian, not, like, just East Asian, like, Middle Easterns, South Asian, East Asian, Southeast Asian, like, this is mainly the Asian community that is just so desperate, because, and they often live in a very lack mentality, meaning that their mindset is full of scarcity, that they're constantly using vocabulary like, I don't have, and I lack, and comparing, that's the whole reason why they compare as well. So yeah, that's the first harmful thing I don't like. It's just they expect, and all they do is expect, it's like, how do I love you? Expect. How do I care for you? Expect. But because of this excessive expecting, it often manifests as criticism, as, like, comparison, as, honestly, like, the kid not having a good relationship with the parent because they just don't feel seen for who they are. And I think that's where I fit in, especially this year. Like, my dad said to me one time, he's like, I don't know who you are, He literally said that, like, when I told him about my goals and stuff, and it was, like, really, really, I'll be honest, like, I didn't say it the nicest way, like, it was really, like, rebellious, it was really critical, and, so I get why he might have been, like, a little shocked, because he hasn't heard of this before, he didn't know I could think like this, but it's just the fact that they expect, and it's like, you need a school, you need a job, you need education, like, they believe education is, like, the way to life, when my dad has had high education, and he's miserable, so it's not about education, and it's not about finding the perfect path. He's always, like, another reason, like, scarcity mindset really affects everything of how you tell your kids. Another reason he tells me, oh, don't be like us, because I was lost and I was confused, like pick the perfect path at one go. And I challenged that. I'm like, Dad, it's not about like, so if he's the reason why you're working at a job even though you study is not because like you didn't pick the perfect choice like at first. Like, how are you supposed to know that? You think there's 8 billion people in this world. Do you think like every one of those people, 8 billion people, will just have a perfect A to B life, A to B like career and job and schooling, education, and then career? Like, no, it's just because they didn't have the courage and they didn't have the confidence and they didn't have the belief in themselves to experiment. And I think a lot of immigrant parents, that's another really bad thing, they're terrified of experimentation, right? Like, they're just like, no, you need your career and your life figured out right away. But it's like, that's exactly the reason why they're stuck and why they're living a life that's not aligned for them, is because they were too scared to try more ways. If point A didn't work, then they should have gone to point B, right? Like, it's all about expanding and it's all about evolving, and you learn way more from that, and it's much more valuable than that, instead of picking one thing and then it not turning out to be good, and you just live in fear and doubt for the rest of your life, and you're wondering what could have been, and you live with that unfulfilled potential in you. Like, my dad came to Canada all by himself because he had dreams, and he did some pretty good stuff. He started a business and everything, but because he had kids with my mom, like she has a huge family, so that's why she wanted kids. She wanted a huge family as well. My dad stopped her at 3, thank God. She wanted like 6, like 7. So yeah, it's because of my mom's values a little bit influenced him. But yeah, and now he had a business and everything, but just it stopped because he realized he had, like, at the time me and my brother were like 4 and 2, like he had kids and he barely had enough time to spend time with them and care for them. So he had to quit it. And now that we're older now and he doesn't have to like spoon feed us or babysit us or anything, he's just simply lost the passion for his business. It was like a pizza business and restaurant, and he said like, there's a lot of like decision making in it. So yeah, it's just really sad because immigrant parents live off of that. They live off of like feeling unfulfilled, and then they put that unfulfilled feeling, that hope, onto their kids. Do you see how wrong that is? Because we're kids, right? Like, we're not all of us are gonna have the emotional capacity to understand, and instead that can cause tension, that can cause distance, because we're just like, I am me, right? Like, so let's say we present like, this is who I am, and it might not fit with who you want me to be, but this is who I am, right? These are my interests, this is where I want to go in life. And then when your parents look at you at the view of expectation, it's like they completely dismiss. Like, they're just like so this is you, right? Person who you want to be, or person who they want you to be, right? But this is you, and this is like your parents' lenses. And instead of seeing, oh, this is who you are, love, okay, no, they're looking at you past who you are, and they're looking straight here, and they're like, we need to get you here, and it can be really dehumanizing, and I think it can really cause a lot of unfulfillment in immigrant parents' relationships, because you're not seeing the kid for who they are, and you're not supporting them or nourishing them for who they are, which is what you should be doing at the end of the day, right? They're over here just like, oh, artist is a bad job, and you shouldn't do artists. But it's like, this world is made up of art, like graphic designers and stuff like that, and how logos are made and how websites are made, and like apps, all of those are graphics that you need to learn how to do. Like, this world is art, and architecture, it's like art. The buildings around this is art. Or like landscape architects who build landscapes of areas, that's art. It's like they draw and they plan and they make up ideas before doing the plan, and yeah, they just refuse to see kind of the value of it because they have their own values, they have their own expectations that they're not unaware of, and they don't want to change. So that's the first thing, and I'm going to share one more, and it's like, hold on, my little notes here. Bum, 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 bum.